I rise today, Madam Speaker, in strong support of House Resolution 1516 that recognizes the 65th anniversary of the end of the Second World War and that honors our veterans' tradition of service and sacrifice that continues to this day. I want to thank the chairman for making this opportunity possible, for his love of history and his understanding of the sacrifices that our men and women have made since the founding of this great country. I particularly remember as a young boy, World War II, my dad served in the Philippines. And I remember the excitement of when he returned home after the war. And there was a chain link fence that separated us from the plane. And as my dad got off the plane, he was carrying a little baby of a lady that was getting off the plane at the same time. And my mom, very enthusiastic young lady, started to climb that chain link fence. She wanted to see her cookie, as she referred to my dad. You know, that same scene was happening all across America. And it's happened many times since as young men and young women have returned home. You know, they have shouldered a burden that subsequent generations have not been forced to share. Our entire nation mobilized to fight a war of national survival. Men and women of all races and creeds put aside their differences and rallied around our national colors, turning our depression woes into industrial and military might. These were Americans of incredible courage and dedication. Even with the millions of stories about the heroes of Second World War, you don't have to look past our own backyard to find Americans who did incredible things in the service of our country. In California's 25th District, men like retired Air Force General Chuck Yeager, who as an enlisted airman was stationed at George Air Force Base in Victorville. After General Yeager earned his commission and pilot's wings, he deployed to fight the Nazi war machine in Europe, where he was shot down, evaded capture, returned to friendly lines, and returned to fight, earning the coveted title of ace for shooting down Luftwaffe fighters. After the war, he returned to California and Palmdale, where he became the first man to break the sound barrier on October 14, 1947. Today, the rolling desert wind that Chuck Yeager soared over inspires the next generation of Air Force test pilots at Edwards Air Force Base. Central California is home to an incredibly diverse environment, from soaring mountains to barren desert to dense urban sprawl. It was the open desert that in 1942 became the home of Marine Corps Logistics Base Barstow. Vital equipment and vehicles for the Marine Corps island hopping campaign was shipped to Barstow in preparation for deployment to the Pacific Theater. Barstow later became the home to many of these veterans who made their homes and developed the economy of San Bernardino County. Central California is also home to one of the more difficult passages of the Second World War, the Manzanar internment camp, where Japanese Americans were relocated and held captive. Many of these young Americans jumped at the chance to prove their devotion to America and enlisted from Manzanar, deployed to the European theater, and distinguished themselves in combat service to their true native country, the United States of America. In 1940, an aerial gunnery range was established in the Mojave Desert, which grew into what is now the National Warfare Training Center at Fort Irwin. Fort Irwin is a premier military training facility in the Western Hemisphere, where servicemen and women from all our armed forces receive the finest training available to prepare them to face our enemies in combat and build damaged peoples into civil societies. Then, as now, what has set our armed forces apart is their commitment to a moral war, a just war, an American way of war. Today, the legacy of these men and women lives on in our service members who serve around the country, around the world in defense of freedom, fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. The soldiers who liberated Dachau are no different from those soldiers who today ensure that young Afghan girls can go to school without being murdered by the Taliban thugs. The Marines who held the line on Wake Island today ensure that a shaky government in Marja will be given a legitimate chance to succeed. Our Air Corps that decisively proved itself over the skies of Europe and the Pacific is now a unique branch of service and a force with truly global reach. The sacrifices our Navy made in the Second World War leave behind a tradition of absolute dedication to duty and a role of unquestioned dominance on the high seas. I urge the House to join me and pass this resolution to commemorate the end of the Second World War and honor the service members who are currently serving in combat operations abroad. And I reserve the balance of my time.